Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Football is coming back. And while I have my qualms about everything surrounding the sport, once the action starts on the field, the other stuff isn't forgotten, but at least we get to enjoy the product that is eventually out there, except for maybe the NFL, but that's a different story. So thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. As always, follow me on those socials, Facebook, Instagram, The Matt Cave Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube, The Matt Cave Podcast, all one word. And that's about it. As you guys know, I don't really do social media, and the social media I do isn't that good anyway. So really, just follow those for insights, daily coverage of the biggest events around the state as far as sporting is concerned, with the occasional pop-up of video game talk. But let's just dive into it, because this is a chock-full episode that I need to squeeze into 30 minutes, so let's go. So last season, BYU had a magical run. It really was. I did not call for them to be that good. It was possible, but with the departure of Jake Retzlaff and the true freshman starting quarterback for the first time in the history of BYU. And by the way, Kalani Sitake has had two first times for the quarterback position. He was the first. He had the first true freshman starting quarterback with Bear Bachmeier, and then with Jaron Hall, it was the first African American starting quarterback at BYU to start a season. So that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. But last season, 12-2, as we all remember, those two losses were. Well, they weren't close. They were blowout losses to Texas Tech, the eventual Big 12 champion, who then got blown out in the college football playoff because they didn't have a quarterback, really, that they could rely on. And so Oregon was just able to stuff them. But this isn't about Texas Tech. They did have the appearance in the People's National Championship, as the Pop-Tarts Bowl likes to label itself. And they had a comeback victory in a very exciting game against Georgia Tech. So that was last season. It was a very successful season any way you slice it. It was. I wouldn't trade last season for anything if I were still a BYU fan, which I still kind of am, because it firmly planted Kalani Sitake in the upper echelons of the head coaching stratosphere. Obviously, he's not up there with Kurt Cignetti or Kirby Smart, or maybe even Kyle Whittingham yet, but he is just right below them in that tier. I would put him up there with Lane Kiffin and Lincoln Riley. Those kind of coaches, I'd put Kalani Sitake up there. So you've got all of that. You have the attention being brought to BYU, not just by ESPN, but by everywhere else, saying that BYU's been snubbed by the college football playoff 2 years in a row. Last year, I felt like it was a little bit more of a snub than it was years in the year previous. But, I mean, the argument can be made that BYU just didn't do quite enough against the top team in the league to warrant an appearance. And if you're just looking at it from cold, hard fact perspective, it's true. Texas Tech is a CFP contender. They are the defending Big 12 champions. They have the deepest pockets of any school in the league. And BYU couldn't hold a candle to them. That's just how it was. So looking at that and looking at the potential snub, I just don't buy a snub. I don't. They were the first team out. Of the teams that didn't make it, they were the best team to not make it in, but there was a definite cutoff line for that. So I wasn't as angry about it as everybody else. I did have a couple of episodes where I tried to make a pitch for BYU, and I did sound angry, but, you know, hindsight being 2020 and all that, I get where the committee was coming from on that front. Major roster losses, there aren't that many. And the ones that are losses have been replaced or will be replaced, except for one. But the names are the names that BYU fans know. It's Jack Kelly, he's playing for the Giants. Carson Ryan, playing for the Raiders. Tanner Wall, playing for the Raiders as well. Chase Roberts as well, he's in the NFL. And Parker Kingston, in a situation that I'm not going to cover or even go near on this program, but he's gone as well. All of those guys, except for Parker Kingston and Chase Roberts, have been readily replaced. Keita Uluwave is arguably a better linebacker than Jack Kelly. And then at the tight end position, they've got Lyons, not Ryder Lyons, that's the quarterback, Walker Lyons, who played at USC and was a focal point of their offense, and then Roger Saleapaga II, who is a very talented tight end from Oregon. So Carson Ryan's production will be replaced pretty easily with those two guys, and they'll be able to run more two tight end sets where both tight ends are a weapon, whereas last year it was more like Carson Ryan was the weapon, and the other tight end that was in there, well, he's just there for blocking. Be the sixth offensive lineman to give the freshman quarterback a little bit more space and time to operate. The biggest loss, though, was Jay Hill following Kyle Whittingham to Michigan. And I don't fault Jay Hill in the slightest. Michigan is a premier job still in college football. They're beginning to fall off a little bit because of all the controversy and off-the-field stuff that's been going on there. But you can't resist that call. So I don't blame Jay Hill at all. I wish him all the best. I think he's going to do very well, especially with all the talent over there. But he's being replaced by Kelly Poppinga. He wasn't my choice to replace Jay Hill, but from everything that's being reported out of spring camp and now as we get deeper into fall camp, there shouldn't be that much of a drop-off because of the continuity of the defense. They were able to keep everybody there, and I'll go over that here in a little bit. But last season, the talent lost isn't irreplaceable. It's not like what the University of Utah is facing. It's not like what Utah State is facing. BYU has it pretty good as far as roster continuity, and that's just another feather in the cap of Kalani Sitake, who preaches family, who preaches brotherhood, and preaches supporting each other no matter what. Well, they're still doing that with this team. So that's really cool to see. And honestly, last season, they can build off of it. They really, really can. So let's go into a little bit deeper what they're missing as far as talent. And really, it's on the outside. It's in that wide receiver group. There's two names that I want to make sure everybody knows about. First one is Jojo Phillips. He was injured last year for the majority of the season, but he checks coming off the bus. Like coming off the bus, he looks like a number one receiver, right? 6'4", 190 pounds. He can run a sub 4.4 40. So he's a guy that can be your number one receiver. He's just got to be healthy and he's got to have sure hands. And last season was supposed to be his breakout season. Aaron Roderick said he had, play calls for him that was going to show off just how talented Phillips is. So I'm sure those haven't gone anywhere. And with with a full season under his belt, Bear Bachmeier will be a better quarterback. How that's going to look, I'll go into that in a little bit here in this episode. But the outside is where BYU is really thin when it comes to the offense. So you got Jojo Phillips, and the other one is legend Glasker. I bet you thought I was going to say Tiger Bachmeier, right? No, it's legend Glasker, the younger brother of Isaiah Glasker, who plays on defense, who came to BYU as a wide receiver in his own right. He's getting rave reviews from everybody coming out of fall camp here. He is fighting to take that number 2 wide receiver spot away from Cody Hagan. Tiger Bachmeier is pretty much locked in as the slot guy, the ex-receiver. I'm okay with that because there's going to be inherent trust between him and Bear Bachmeier. But when you look at what Legend Glasker can do, he is that explosive player that BYU kind of lacked last season. Parker Kingston kind of was explosive, but not in the way that Legend Glasker can be. And so that's where things are looking up for the outside. And then cornerback as well. Obviously, you got Evan Johnson. You've got Tarian Alexander. Those two guys are very, very good. But you still worry about those number one receivers, those NFL talent receivers that go against BYU. So if there is an area to worry about, it is on the outside, both on offense and on defense. And then special teams. Special teams is all brand new kicker, brand new punter, brand new long snapper, brand new holder, who also happens to be the brand new punter, and a brand new special teams coordinator. So that is also something that could come back to bite BYU in the hindquarters because BYU loves their close games. Like, they are the cardiac Cougars now. So special teams is another area of concern for this team. Otherwise, this team is legitimately at the top of the Big 12 in every group and a legitimate college football playoff contender. Just there. I said it. So now, let's go into their schedule. Let's talk about their schedule here for a little bit. So they open against Utah Tech. They are doing what every big program in the nation has done in their history and continues to do for a lot of them. Just look at Indiana, for example. Indiana doesn't have a Power 4 non-conference opponent. It's all cream puffs. It's all warm-up games before they get into the Big Ten. And they're not apologizing for it. All right, well, there you go. But BYU opens the season at home, 2 straight games at home. First against Utah Tech on September 5th. Obviously, warm-up game. That's a game you want to get everything ironed out, and you want to get out without any injuries. That's always the goal against an FCS opponent, and BYU has done a pretty good job of that the previous few years, of doing what they need to do, handling business, and getting out without major injuries. So that's how they open up. September 12th is their first major test, and it's a major test. Arizona, with Noah Fafita. Last season, BYU had to come back and win in overtime against Arizona. It was a very weird game, though. BYU had the momentum, and then they had that weather break, and everything just flipped on its head. So this season, hopefully there won't be a weather break. Hopefully there won't be overtime, and BYU does well. The last time Arizona was in Provo, they did have Tetairoa McMillan at T-Mac, and he's in the NFL right now, and BYU was still able to dominate the Wildcats. So that one is an afternoon game. It should be a very fun game, up and down the field, I'm expecting, because I don't trust Kelly Papinga as a defensive coordinator. I don't. He's going to have to show it to me. That's what I'm saying here. He's going to have to show it to me. He's going to have to prove to me that he can follow up Jay Hill. Now, I'm not expecting him to be Jay Hill. He's going to have his own zhuzh on the defense, but he's going to have to prove it to me. So that's their second game, and it's a major test because with Noah Fafita, who's been a starting quarterback for 4 years, there's not much under the sun he hasn't seen. And so BYU is going to have to be there early. And if there is a criticism from last season, BYU didn't jump on opponents like they probably should have. And that could be a problem again this season. And it was just the nature of the offense, the nature of the quarterback position, that they needed to ease themselves into the game. This season, they don't really have that luxury. There's no excuse to not be on your opponent early and often. So that is another thing I'll be looking out for this team. So that's the second game. Third game is at Colorado State. Should be fine. Should be a win for BYU. That was a game that's been on the schedule for decades now. And so that wraps up that sort of agreement that those two schools have. Then it's at TCU. That's another huge game. So they have 2 huge games in their first 4. So at TCU is the first true road test for Bear Bachmeier this season. TCU and Arizona both are sleeper picks to get in front of the Utah schools and be in the Big 12 championship against Texas Tech. They're both popular sleeper picks. Now with TCU, I'm not as worried about them as I have been in the past, because in the past, back in the Mountain West, BYU had this big, huge, slow offensive line. TCU had that fast, small, aggressive defense, and it tore BYU apart. That's not the case anymore because BYU isn't built on the passing game. They're built on LJ Martin and the power running game. They run a power spread offense. So I'm not as worried about TCU as I might have been in the past, but it's still a huge test. It's the first true road test, and it's a team that is going to be gunning for BYU. Every single team on the schedule is going to be gunning for BYU because now they're established. It's 2 years in a row. They finished in the top 3 of the conference. They know BYU's legit. They're not sneaking up on anybody. After that, it's a home game against the new-look Iowa State. Matt Campbell left to Penn State when Kalani Sitake rebuffed their advances, and he took basically his entire team with him. So gone are Rocco Becht and Carson Hansen and all of those guys. It'll be interesting to see what Iowa State could do, but they are being picked at the bottom of the conference. But as we know, being picked at the bottom of the conference in the preseason doesn't mean anything because BYU was. So a couple of years ago. But Iowa State at home, sort of a warm-up game for the big one. And no, it's not the University of Utah. It's Notre Dame. Notre Dame was included in the college football playoff. People argued that they shouldn't have been. And so this is a gut check. It's at home. It's in Provo. And that's a different beast than other games you would think. And if it's at night, that's another, advantage for BYU, because under Kalani Sitake, if it's a big home game at night, he's got a pretty darn good record and his team show up. So that's a huge game. If BYU can win that game and they win all games previous, they have a really good shot of going undefeated. Really good shot. Then it's at UCF out in Orlando. Always a tough one because it's a cross-country road trip, but it's not anything BYU hasn't done before. Then they come home to face Arizona State without Sam Leavitt, without Cam Scadaboo or any sort of running game. I've never believed that Kenny Dillingham is that great of a coach. We'll see what he does this season with the Sun Devils, but I think BYU can handle that game at home if they don't look ahead to their next opponent, which is Utah. That game's a coin flip every year. Who knows? You guys know I'm not a betting man. I don't really like sports betting, but gun to my head, I would pick BYU in that game. I would. Then it's at home against Baylor. Should be a win. At Kansas, which has been a bugaboo for BYU. Kansas, for whatever reason, has Kalani Sitake's number. So he's going to have to exercise some demons there. And then it's at home against the Cincinnati team that is in a rebuilding year. Looking at that schedule, you can make the argument for 12-0. You can make a very strong argument for 11-1. And even 10-2 with the one loss in Big 12 play to Utah. Like that's the kind of season to be expecting from BYU. So that's your schedule. So let's go over position groups and kind of like 3 players on each side of the ball I want you all to look out for, aside from who I mentioned with the wide receiver group. So looking at 3 players on offense, obviously it's LJ Martin and Bear Bachmeier. It's their show. So I'm not really going to count them as being the guys to look out for. The first one I want you to look out for is Bruce Mitchell. Bruce Mitchell is being picked as a preseason All-American center. He is first team all Big 12 preseason. He's a guy that has potential NFL talent in him. He's being projected as a late round pick, but could work his way up draft boards depending on how he does this year. He has had injury issues in the past, so if he can stay healthy, he could be a day 2 pick. He really could be a second round center. That's the first name I want you to look out for. The second name I want you to look out for, and this is a very important player, it's Sione Moa. Sione Moa has flashed a ton of talent. A ton of talent coming out of the backfield. He's quick. He makes really good decisions on cutting into the zone reads. And once he makes his decision, he puts his body behind it. He's had major injury issues. He missed all of last season, basically. And the season before that, he missed about half of it. So if there is no backup running back for LJ Martin, that could be a death knell for the season. It really could be. LJ Martin's big. He's had surgery to clean up some issues. So he could handle the load, but you don't really want him to. You want him as fresh as possible, especially as you get into those big games. So Sione Moa is the second name I want you to look out for. And the third name I want you to look out for is Jojo Phillips. He has to emerge as a number 1, as a Chase Roberts type player, but better. He's more athletic than Chase Roberts. He is. He needs to stay healthy. And he needs to not drop the ball. He dropped a lot of passes last season, which made Bear Bachmeier go away from him. That's just going to happen, whether it's a young quarterback or not. If you can't trust your guy's going to catch the ball, you're not going to throw it his way. So Jojo Phillips needs to emerge as the number 1 receiver. He does. I'm not saying he can't. He has all the talent in the world, but he needs to for this offense to really take off and soar. So quarterback position is Bear Bachmeier. I don't expect the passing numbers to really improve that much. I don't. He can. And as the season went along, he did throw the ball better, but he was asked to throw the ball more because LJ Martin was ailing towards the end of the season because they leaned on him heavily. So Bear Bachmeier does need to throw the ball better than he did last season, make better decisions, and be more of a threat throwing the ball than just running it. And when he's running the ball, he needs to protect himself better because by the end of the season, you could tell he's playing with a lot of injuries. So a lot of stuff there, but Bear Bachmeier is the quarterback going forward. Trayson Borga is the backup. So that's the situation. Quarterback. Running back, it's LJ Martin. He's the workhorse. He is the show. He's the show horse. So he's the guy that is going to carry the offense. As LJ Martin goes, as goes BYU's offense. That's how the year's going to be. It's not going to be the BYU offenses that I enjoy, which is throwing the ball all over the yard, 400 yards passing per game, that sort of thing. That's not going to happen. Not with LJ Martin. But it is going to be a ball control offense, which will then allow the defense to be more aggressive. So LJ Martin, Sione Moa, really big that Sione Moa needs to stay healthy this year because he has the talent to be a very good lightning to LJ Martin's thunder. So there's that. Wide receiver I've talked about. I'm not going to go over it again. I do expect a bigger year from Tiger Bachmeier, though. I really do. I think he's going to be that crucial slot receiver guy. Tight end, talked about them too. You got Walker Lyons. You got Roger Saleapaga. Probably the most talented tight end room BYU has seen in a long time. Both guys are weapons. Both guys are very seasoned veterans and guys you can trust. So I'm expecting a pretty big year from Walker Lyons as well. And also considering last season, Bear Bachmeier didn't really start throwing the ball to Carson Ryan until the last half of the season. So he got more comfortable with the offense, throwing the seam balls to the tight end, and he was able to fit it into areas where Carson Ryan didn't get blown up as much as he could have. So tight end is really, really talented right now. Offensive line, I'm not as worried about it as everybody else. Kalani Sitake was able to keep the offensive line coach, who's done a wonderful job since he got there. And then you've got guys like Andrew Gentry, who I wouldn't be surprised to see slide over to left tackle. He might stay at right tackle because that's his best shot at getting it to the NFL. But he could slide over to left tackle. Then you got the preseason All-American Bruce Mitchell. He's the key to this offensive line. You got Sonny Mocassini, and then you also have Kyle Swartziak, who is also getting all Big 12 nods. He's being looked at as a potential late-round draft pick. So the offensive line is going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. Then you go over to defense. So 3 names to look out for on defense are Cade Uluwave. I'm very excited about this kid. He's going to be very, very good. I don't think people understand how talented of a player he is. And so he's going to have a huge year. So Cade Uluwave playing linebacker. And then you got Falateo Satuwala. Man, I just really butchered his name. Falateo Satuwala. He is a rangy, big safety who, if he can improve his coverage skills, he could be a day 2 draft pick. He really could be, because he's big and he's fast and he's not afraid to knock running backs on their rear end. And the NFL loves those kind of guys. So just look at Kyle Hamilton of the Ravens. That's the kind of player Satuwala can be. So he just needs to stay healthy and then just realize what he can do. So those are 2. And then the third one is a guy that I called out last season that didn't really get much playing time, but it's Tausili Akana, the transfer from Texas. I think if he can get on the field and stay on the field, he's going to get a lot of sacks. He's a very talented kid who just needs to see the field, which means he needs to prove himself. So there are names in there that you notice I didn't say. Isaiah Glasker is one. Keanu Tanavasa, I didn't mention him either, because I just expect them to be good. I expect them to just be themselves, really. Isaiah Glasker can improve a little bit on his path to the ball carrier. He ran himself out of a lot of plays last season, and Jack Kelly was able to cover for him. So I think he's going to learn from that this season and be a better player. So you look at the defensive line, they need to get more pressure on the quarterback. That's just bar none. That's been the history of BYU since Lavelle Edwards retired. Like, the defensive line needs to get at the quarterback without the help of a blitz. They need to do better at that. So Bodie Schoonover, Keanu Tanavasa, Tausili Akana, they have to be better. They do. And the defense will be better for it, because then you can confuse the quarterbacks with more complicated coverages, because you don't need to go base coverage because you have to send a blitz. So that's one thing I'm looking out for. Linebackers are going to be fantastic again. Isaiah Glasker, Cade Uluwave alone make this a very, very good linebacker group. And then you also have Siale Ezra, who came on very strong last season. So the linebacker group is good, and the defensive backfield is very good as well. Obviously, you got Falateo Satuwala, you've got Raider Demooney, Terrian Alexander, and Evan Johnson. Those 4 alone are probably the best defensive backfield in the Big 12. I would put them up there with any team. So The defense has the pieces. They have the continuity from last year. They just need Kelly Papinga to not screw it up. So we'll see what happens there. And obviously, special teams is a wild card. All brand new. We'll see. Big kick Will Ferrin. He choked a couple times last season, so we'll see what happens with this new crop. But that's another storyline to watch as the season goes along. Now, record prediction. I talked about it a little bit earlier in the episode. I honestly think this team can go 12-0. Obviously, the game against Notre Dame would be a huge upset, but it is in Provo. It will probably be at night. Primetime game. BYU's had really good success in those games over the past 3 years. So, it would lend itself to another big game for BYU. Honestly, though, I'm thinking 11-1. The one loss being to Notre Dame, close wins over Utah and TCU, and BYU returning to the Big 12 championship game against Texas Tech for the second year in a row. And we'll have to see which team is healthier at that point. Because the team that's more healthy in that game, I feel like is going to win the Big 12 championship. I do. So, that's my record prediction for BYU this season. The one loss coming to Notre Dame at home. Everything else pretty much going according to plan for BYU. But it all hinges on the health of LJ Martin. It does. If LJ Martin can't stay healthy this year, the season might go sideways. Unless Bear Bachmeier takes a massive step throwing the football. So that's my record prediction for the Cougars this year. 11-1, getting to the Big 12 championship game. If they can go 11-1 and they lose the game to Texas Tech, but they lose it in a close game, they're in the college football playoff because their two losses would be against an undefeated Notre Dame and an undefeated Texas Tech. You cannot knock the Cougars on those if they're close losses. They will be in the college football playoff this year. That is my prediction. They've been knocking on the door 2 years in a row. This is the year they're allowed in. So BYU gets into the college football playoff. They make an appearance there. It depends on who they play. Where the game is going to be held. Depending on the matchup, they could potentially win their first college football playoff game. It's very, very feasible. But the other thing that I want to mention here, now that I have a couple of minutes left, is the relationship between Brian Santiago and Kalani Sitake. There's a lot of rumors flying around. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff that has been said by Sitake. And Brian Santiago is probably going to mess this up. I don't see him changing his tune. I don't see him backing down from what he's been doing. For whatever reason, Santiago is pumping money into the basketball program more so than the football program, which is a mistake. It's a mistake. And so Kalani Sitake is going to be leaving at the end of the year. That's my closeted dark horse prediction because of the fractured relationship between Santiago and him. So this ride ends this year for BYU. It ends on a high note on the field, off the field, because of Brian Santiago. It's all going to come crashing down. The pride of one man. So that's my prediction there as well. Much like with how Kyle Whittingham left Utah, Kalani Sitake is probably going to leave in the same fashion. So that's my prediction for the Cougars this year. So you're going to have to let me know what your thoughts are on it. Hopefully you have a rosier outlook on the relationship between Santiago and Sitake than I do. But little teasers for what's coming down the pipe here. Next week, it is the University of Utah preview. I have a pretty rosy outlook on them as well. After that is Utah State, who knows? Brand new conference, brand new quarterback, brand new coordinators for Bronco Mendenhall. Who knows? And then this week, there will be a tier list on my YouTube channel for all-time Utah Jazz players. So, and I'm going to keep it simple again. S through D. That's where I'll leave it. It won't be the complicated mess that BYU was. I might have to redo that video as well. But that's what's coming down the pipe. Thank you all so much for being here. I really, really do appreciate each and every one of you. And don't forget to share this with at least one person that you think might enjoy the program. And I'll see you guys either later this week or next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.